Greg Jericho, thank you so much for joining the Daily Aus.
No worries, Billi. Great to be here.
Now, we are talking today because last week we got new inflation data. For anyone who missed it, what did those inflation numbers tell us?
What it showed was that inflation is really slow quite dramatically. Now, inflation, of course, is when we talk about inflation, what we're talking about is the pace of price increases. We're always talking about prices going up. All we're worried about is how fast are they going up. And in the year to June this year, overall prices, the consumer price index went up 2.1%. Now, the Reserve Bank likes to aim for inflation being between 2% and 3%. So if we're at 2.1%, we're getting really close to the bottom of that range. And even more kind of stark about that is that in 5 of the capital cities, inflation grew actually slower than 2%. It was only in Brisbane and Perth where inflation was above 2%. But if you didn't have that, inflation would have been actually below 2% around Australia, and that's pretty slow.
If it gets to below 2%, is that bad? Is it bad if it's too slow?
Yeah, it's one of these things that people will think, oh, if prices are going really slow, then that's good. You know, the cost of me buying stuff isn't going up much. But the problem is the reason why prices are going up slow. If prices aren't rising fast, that means actually people aren't out there shopping much. We're not buying a lot of stuff. We're not using a lot of services. And as a result, businesses don't feel like they can raise their prices because they're not getting many people in the door. And if they raise prices, they're going to get even fewer.
When we posted about the inflation numbers on the Daily Aus, the number one question we got from the audience is, if inflation is at this 4-year low, then why is the cost of living still so high? So can you just explain why falling inflation doesn't mean falling prices?
Yeah, it's when people talk about cost of living, they're generally not thinking so much about prices rising. They're thinking about how much prices have gone up since, they can kind of remember. And I always think of a good example is kind of like milk. We can all remember the $2 milk, and we all know milk is not $2 now.
I do not remember $2
You
milk.
can't remember $2 milk? Oh,
No.
gosh. All right. There used to be $2 milk, because Coles and Woolies were basically having this fight where they were putting $2 milk to try and get people in. It was a thing. And they stopped doing that. Prices went up, and then they kind of flatlined. The prices of most things, when they go up, they stay up. They don't go down. Like a few things, petrol often bounces around. You will actually see petrol prices go down. On some things like electrical goods, you might see prices going down. But generally on most things, once they go up, they stay up.
Yeah.
And so that's what really, I think, hits most people, and certainly for the listeners, we're still seeing, for example, I'm saying 2.1% inflation, but rent prices were about 4.8, in some places even higher than that. And so you might be thinking, the overall average of everything we buy is 2.1, but on the things that really matter, and especially for younger people who are renting, they're still feeling that pinch. And also on the other side of the equation, their income, their wages mightn't have been going up certainly that much. And so you're feeling the impact of the increase in rents, increase in prices, and you're not getting the benefit so much of the increase in wages that kind of cancel it out.
And so the big question in terms of what happens now is whether this new inflation data will impact the Reserve Bank of Australia's next cash rate decision. Before we get to what these inflation numbers could mean for that decision, can you just remind us exactly what the cash rate is and how it's connected to inflation?
Yeah, the cash rate is basically the interest rate that the Reserve Bank borrow or lends to banks. It's a way that actually helps fund banks so that they can then lend to us. And what it really does is it gives a real indicator to the banks about what they should be lending money at. So the cash rate at the moment is 3.85%. Now, that's not an interest rate you're going to get offered anywhere by any bank. The banks get a lot better rate than we do. But generally, when the Reserve Bank does increase or decrease the cash rate, people's mortgage rates will go up or down, and also the rates that you get charged for deposits will, or you actually get given. It doesn't always go up exactly the same amount or go down exactly the same amount, but generally there is a pretty good link. And so when we talk about the cash rate and the Reserve Bank lowering the cash rate, what we're hoping is that all the banks will follow. They will lower their mortgage rates. They'll lower the small business loan rates. And that means people feel more confident to be able to go out and invest, whether that's buying a house or if you're a small business, to be able to invest in equipment, invest in material, and that sort of generates more economic activity. People are buying stuff, people are investing, and it gets money flowing.
Hello, my name's Sam. I'm the co-founder of TDA. I'm just popping in to interrupt this video to ask if you could do one thing for me, and that is press subscribe on this YouTube channel. It's the best way to show us that you love what we do and that you're here for our future. And now, back to the deep dive.
And so we are expecting the RBA to make another cash rate decision on the 12th of August. Well, not expecting, it will happen that they will make another decision. What do you think that they will decide?
Oh, gosh. I mean, they really threw a spanner into the works in July when they didn't cut the cash rate, and everyone thought they would. It was the market. The market actually can basically bet, in a sense, on what the cash rate is going to do by buying and selling bonds and things, and they do on the futures market. And everyone, pretty much, it was about a 95% chance that they were going to cut the rate, and they didn't. Now, one of the reasons they said they didn't is they were wanting more information, more data, and one of the big things they were wanting was this inflation figure. So that the fact that it's coming really low, the fact that the core inflation, which is basically inflation without the big jumps and big falls counted, so it kind of just gets the middle part, that also came down. So it suggests that this isn't just a one-off blip, that this is actually sort of a long-term trend. So that's a good sign. But also, since the last decision by the Reserve Bank, we had the unemployment figures come out that showed an increase of 0.2%, so quite a significant jump in unemployment. So that means fewer people were employed. So it's a real sense of, we got low inflation, we got unemployment rising. When that's happening, generally that's a good time for the Reserve Bank to cut rates. I'd be shocked if they don't, but I was shocked a month ago when they didn't. But I think really they're kind of running out of excuses now, because they said, we need more data, we need more information. Well, they've got two really big data points. They've got the unemployment rising. They've got inflation looking pretty good, pretty low. So they've really run out of excuses now.
Just lastly, the last time I spoke to you was just after US President Donald Trump had announced the tariffs for the first time for all countries. And things in the world economy seemed really uncertain. And I'm interested now, if you had to give a general assessment as to how the world economy is going, what would you say?
Well, it's a little bit more certain than it was. We've just had Trump come out with basically, here's all the new tariffs, and Australia is still at 10%. New Zealand's at 15%. Europe's at 15%. Canada is even higher. I think it's 35%. It's quite bizarre how if Trump was just going from zero to announcing all these tariffs right now, it would be the most absurdly large increase in tariffs by any country for, basically a century. But because we've had the last sort of 5 months of Trump threatening massively high numbers, now he's come out at these sort of 15, 25%. People are, that seems okay. But others are stepping back going, you do realize that this is still an incredibly big increase on tariffs. So it's a lot less confusing and a lot less uncertain than it was, but we still are waiting, I think, for all the flow through of the slowdown in America that's going to come because of this. The good news, though, is because Australia's at 10%, kind of bizarrely, we're actually better off because everyone else has got worse. Whereas before we were all on a level playing field, everyone was kind of on zero tariffs. Now we're on 10%. That's not good, but others are 15 and 25, 35. So if you're an American importer and thinking, do I buy something from Australia or Japan or Europe? Well, actually, Australia's got the lowest tariff. So he's done us a favor. It's truly bizarre. He's done us a favor. He's not doing Americans a favor at all. He's making things more expensive for them. But I think the scares for Australia about what might happen are much reduced now than they were a few months ago. We still are worried about what he might do about pharmaceuticals and the PBS, but we know the government's not going to budge on the PBS, so things kind of look okay for Australia at the moment. But as with Trump, who knows, he could wake up and he's decided to do something completely different.
So interesting. Greg Jericho, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast to explain all things finance to us.
No worries, Billi. Really great to be here.